Hello guys, today we will be talking about a topic which will be covering our syllabus about our specification topic about how the cells get its energy. So the first point will be a cell needs a source of energy in order to be able to carry out all processes need for life. So this energy is basically nothing else respiration done by our cells. So it is explained that it gets this energy by breaking down food molecules to release the stored chemical energy that they contain. So in this case we would take glucose as our food source, and this would be used as in the sense of aerobic respiration to produce energy. So whenever aerobic respiration happens, energy is gained. Alright, energy is gained. This energy is converted from the stored chemical energy. I will just make it better for everyone. It uses stored chemical energy in the food to produce energy for the cell to continue and carry out all life processes. This process is called respiration. Now see the difference between respiration and breathing is way, these two are way two different things. Alright, so this usually comes up in the exam, and I face this tough thing in my life also. Breathing, just ignore my handwriting. Yeah, breathing. So I'll just erase that because it's very annoying. We are talking about breathing and respiration. These two are two different things, way two different things. And first of all, respiration means the same. People think that respiration means the same as breathing, but although there are links between the two processes, biological meaning of respiration is very different. Now respiration's main definition is using the chemical energy from the food to by stored chemical energy in the food by breaking down the food and use the chemical energy to produce energy, so it could allow all other processes to take on in the cell. And breathing is something else. Breathing is a physical process. For example, we inhale air and we exhale out air, so this is called breathing. Breathing is taking in oxygen and removing carbon dioxide. That is called breathing. And breathing provides us with oxygen, and respiration requires oxygen. So they both are linked to a same work, but they work in different way, which is what this point is explaining. Respiration happens in all the cells of our body. Oxygen is used to oxidize food, and carbon dioxide and water are released as waste products. So we are talking about aerobic respiration here, and oxygen is used to oxidize food. Means of food is glucose. We oxidize glucose to produce carbon dioxide and water, which are our waste products, and carbon dioxide is then exhaled out by the lungs. So there is breathing, and this process where the food is oxidized is known as respiration. The main food oxidized is a sugar called glucose, as here is explained. Glucose contains stored chemical energy that can be converted into other forms of energy that the cell can use. It can be converted into kinetic energy, it can be converted into any energy the cell wants at that time. And respiration releases some heat energy in the sense of heat, but most is used to make substance called ATP. ATP, which I said in last class, is known as adenosine triphosphate, which is very important in our cell, which I will discuss in this video. Whereas the use The uses of ATP are many. There are four main uses: contraction of muscle cells producing movement, active transfer of molecules and ions, building large molecules such as protein. So these two processes we'll talk this about later, and this requires the same energy created by in this reaction. This energy is required to contract the muscle cells and produce movement, and where cell division also requires meiosis and mitosis, which I'll discuss in the other in s- after some videos. Active transport of molecules and ions, I will discuss this in the next video, and building large molecules such as protein is discussed in at the end of the book, so it will take a time to discuss that. But until then, we'll talk about ATP, adenine triphosphate. Respiration releases energy while other cell processes use it up. So respiration releases energy in the form of heat and other things, but one of them thing is ATP. So this energy is used by the cell for other processes. Cells have a way of passing the energy from respiration to other processes that need it. So for example, respiration occurs in our cell, and then our cell requires energy to contract our muscles, for example, or move molecules and ions by using active transport or building large molecules such as proteins. So they use energy which is called as adenine triphosphate or ATP, which is a chemical. It's an chemical which is used, which helps in transferring energy to other processes within the cell. And then ATP is present in all living cells, obviously, because when we need this type of chemical in our cells, which will allow us to transfer energy to other parts of the cell, and will allow it to take and it would allow to take up the process to do other processes. This ATP would be there in every living organism. When this reaction takes place, chemical energy is released and can be used to drive metabolic processes that need it. So, which is the same point, chemical energy is released and can be used to drive metabolic processes that need it. And then during respiration, the opposite happens. So, here when energy is needed, ATP is broken down to ADP and phosphate. I didn't explain it because of that necessary, but still I'll tell it to you. When respiration happens, ATP is made from ADP and phosphate, which releases energy, and that energy is used up for providing energy to other parts of the cell. Energy from the oxidation of glucose is used to drive the reverse reaction, and the phosphate error. ATP is often described as the energy currency of the cell. It transfers energy between the processes that releases it respiration and the processes in a cell that use it up. So it all comes to this point that energy currency of the cell, like we have currency for our countries and for different countries. For cell, energy currency is ATP, which means that it transfers or passes on energy in form of ATP only. So it usually happens that when energy is needed, ATP is broken down into ADP. Energy requirement requires ATP to convert into ADP, which is adenine diphosphate. And it is not that necessary to learn about this, but still you should know that ADP is important too, that when ATP is converted to ADP, energy is released, and this energy is used to power up other reactions. And the aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration, these two are two types of respiration which takes place in our cell, and I will be discussing this right now. Um, Aerobic respiration is where we use our glucose completely, and it's a reaction which normally takes place in our cell. It's a normal reaction taking place in our body, and we use up the oxygen we breathe in, we inhale. I actually should say that inhale, and glucose, which is oxidized by using oxygen. This process, the whole process here, is equivalent to anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration's equation is also required to be memorized in chemical form and word form also. Glucose plus oxygen gives you carbon dioxide and water plus energy. This energy can be heat energy, or it can be stored in form of ATP, as I discussed it now. And then you should know the chemical equation. C6H12O6 plus 6O2 gives us 6CO2 plus 6H2O and energy. It should be balanced, and I will be talking about this balancing equation chemistry, which I'll do it inshallah later. And then now I'll talk about aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration requires oxygen for the reaction. Alright, oxygen is required for this reaction, and this oxygen helps in oxidizing glucose, so it completely uses up glucose stored up in the cell. It means that there is a complete combustion. Combustion is where when an object is or an material is oxidized. So here we have complete combustion, that glucose is completely oxidized by oxygen, and then as a product, or should I say byproduct, lactic acid is now produced as a waste product. So there are some similarities and differences in both of these respiration. First of all, I am discussing aerobic respiration anyways. Used in producing energy for a longer time period, as for example when marathon racers are taking part in their races, they usually need a high amount of glucose in their body, because they have to continuously run through they have to and continuously run throughout the time, and they have to cover a large area also, which requires them to have more glucose, and they require more energy. So as aerobic respiration creates more energy, they run slowly, and it allows the body to inhale oxygen also and produce energy for the marathon race. So it is used for longer time period where a person is jogging or walking. Aerobic respiration is most handful at this time, and then it produces water. And then we'll talk about anaerobic respiration, which takes mostly place in yeast and unicellular and multicellular organisms, and it takes place in our muscle cells also and other cells, but it's not that common. And the reaction, you should not memorize it in the form of uh, ca- chemical form, means you shouldn't memorize it in this form, formula form. And the reaction is glucose is broken down without using oxygen. It's not oxidized. It means glucose is just broken down into lactate and some energy. It means that oxygen is not used up in this reaction. It's not used up in this reaction, and it doesn't completely use up glucose stored up in the cell. So no glucose is used in the cell. I'm sorry, not complete glucose is used, which means it is an incomplete combustion. It produces lactate or lactic acid as its byproduct, and used in producing energy for a shorter time period, and it is used for sprinters. So for example, there's a race about 100 meters race or 50-meter race. A runner or the sprinter would require more energy, and in a shorter period of time, his cells has to create more energy in a shorter period of time, and they don't have the time to access oxygen. So when they inhale, they don't get the complete oxygen. That is why they break glucose on them by cells, and they produce lactic acid, which is dangerous and toxic for our muscle cells and other cells. Usually it causes some of the racers and sprinters fatigueness in the muscles, and they get and the muscles get fatigued, and then they have difficulty for difficulty in walking and doing their work as their muscles get contract. But this respiration produces lesser energy, but it produces quicker energy, and it provides energy in a very short time. So that is why it is used in racing sprints, such as 100 meters or 50 meters and a close distance, and doesn't produce water. Then we have to cover one small topic, which is oxygen depth. Oxygen depth is the amount of oxygen required to oxidize lactic acid, which is built by anaerobic respiration. When this type of anaerobic respiration takes place, lactic acid is produced. Alright. Lactic acid is produced, and when lactic acid is produced, it is built up. Just think this as molecules in the cell, and then and the cell requires, disable the cell, don't make it easier, and the cell requires O2, oxygen, from the environment, and then we inhale oxygen, and then oxygen comes into our body, and then this oxygen is taken up by the cell. Now the oxygen is taken up by the cell, and then this oxygen is used to oxidize lactic acid. When lactic acid is oxidized, this O2 will oxidize lactic acid. It will allow us to remove the amount of lactic acid in numerous amount of or volume of lactic acid produced in our body to be diminished or reduced to a greater extent, which is not threatening for our body. And this is known as oxygen depth, the amount of oxygen required to reduce or to finish the level or to completely neutralize the threat of lactic acid in our body. And we use oxygen from our environment to oxidize it, and to remove lactic acid from our blood is lactic acid from our body and completely diminish is known as oxygen depth, the amount of oxygen required. So this is the definition of it in a simpler form, and we have covered today's topic about anaerobic respiration, aerobic respiration, and how cells gets its energy and use of ATP and ATP. I hope you like this video. Like my video and subscribe my channel.